Hello, everybody. I want to thank you for attending today's webinar on data entry forms for custom tables inside of ACT. So what we're looking at currently is ACT with Impact installed. So with Impact installed, you're seeing, of course, our enhanced navigation bar here on the left. You're seeing one of our new features here, policy table. So this is underneath here, notes, histories, and such. We have a custom table called policy, but that policy table can also be displayed above the fold. So look for that feature. Okay, let's talk about data entry forms. If I come along and I double click here, it's going to open up, sorry about that. It's going to open up the default data entry form. Now, how do you create a default data entry form or other data entry forms? What I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out of here, and I'm going to go to my layouts drop down. Now these are the layouts for the list views, but if you go all the way to the bottom of the layouts, they customize the layouts. Over here you get the data entry layouts. So as you can see, I have two layouts on here, one called demo, one called webinar. And the webinar is set to default. So if I wanted to do the demo by default, I could highlight that and set it as default. If I want to create a new layout, that's simple. Let's just go and create a form, and I'll call it my just test form. I'll say save, and it's telling us that it's going to create a default test form, and it's going to add as many fields as it can. So here is the data entry form editor, and in the editor, you of course can drag things around, right? So let's go back here and look at this. Let's save these changes, yes. And again, I'm going to go into the webinar one. I'm going to say set that as default, and I'm going to say save. Now when I click on it, again, it's opening up my default layout. If this screen was a little bit bigger, we have a drop down inside of here, which shows us all of the data entry forms that we have. Like here's that test data entry form that I just created. And again, this was a demo data entry form that was created a little earlier. And here's our webinar data entry form. All right, well, let's go in and edit one of these forms. Let's go to our test one, the one that we just created. Inside of here, if you're an admin in the ACT database, you will have the design button right here. So I'm just going to click on the design. And that, again, is going to open up the designer window for us. It's on a separate screen, so I'll just bring it back over here. All right, what are the elements of the designer window? Well, the elements of the designer window are basically this toolbox here. This is where you can drag fields onto the screen. Now, it's blank here because all the fields already exist on here. But if I come along and take all these fields and delete those, it puts them back into the existing field list. So I can come along and say, hey, I just want the expiration and I want the policy number. Now on this form, I made changes to it. If I save it and close it, as I say, we consume the form. We use that form up here. But maybe we want this form actually more like a dialog box, right? Up here on this top, we're seeing the controls to select the current contact, a company, a group, an opportunity. You may not need to do that because you're always entering the policy when you're on Chris Huffman's records. So there's no reason to have this information here. So let's go back into the designer. And I can take this information out. It doesn't have to be there. So I'm going to strip this out. Save changes, yes. I'm going to take away this little divider line we put in there by default. So I'm left with record manager, last edited by, created date, edit date. Maybe I don't need any of these things. Let's make this as small as possible. I really just need to know the expiration date and the number. That's all I need to know. So I'm going to drag this up here. And I can't see the bottom of the form, so I'm going to scroll down here. And I'm going to make this form small. Now it's nice and small for us here. We have a save and close button here. So if we go and consume this form, you'll see it's a nice, simple little form. The users just have to fill in 2 pieces of information. And we have a save and close, but we can make this, again, more like a dialog box. Users are used to dialog boxes, and dialog boxes have, yes, no, okay, cancel field buttons on them. Well, I'm going to use this tab strip up here to change the toolbox from the existing fields to buttons and pick lists. So now I have all these specialized buttons. So I want to say button OK, and I want a button saying cancel. So now I have those buttons lined up on the form. One thing you'll find with our designer is we have snapping grids, right? So if I highlight these two controls and I start to drag them, you see the way there's a blue line that shows up there? It's kind of like a snap tooth. So it snaps right to that side. So that's nice that I can kind of snap it in. Visually, it's pleasing in here. I can bring this down a little bit, and we can see it snaps to the left at expiration. It snaps to the right on the cancel button. There's a couple other things that snap to also. If I come along here and I finally get to this spacing, this will give you an equal spacing between objects. Now, if I had 4 objects, you'd see the equal spacing, but that's a little spacing control. So again, I'm just going to just resize this screen. I'm going to save changes. And now you can see that we have a very simple OK cancel dialog box. So I'm just going to say OK. Let's go back into that dialog box. We can take this even a step further. There's a toolbar up top here. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit bigger to get to my design button. We can remove that toolbar. We go that far. So here's the toolbar at the top. It's on there by default, just like all the other controls are. I'm going to remove that toolbar, making this a pure dialog box. All right, so I'm just going to stretch them up there. I'm going to say save, and I'm going to say OK. And there's our very simple dialog box. So if I wanted to come into a form, I can do it there. Now, the question you're asking yourself right now is, oh, well, how do you edit then? If you're in an edit kind of mode, I remove the toolbar, I don't have the edit button. Well, that's why this is here. If we go to Tools and we say Customize the Layouts, Data Entry, Webinar, I can modify the form here. I don't have the Design button. But if I click on it here, I can, oh, wrong one. Which one was I using? The test one. Sorry, modify the test form. And there's our test form. If we wanted to put the toolbar back on top, say we removed it and said, no, we like it, we like the access to different options up there. The toolbar is right over here. It's in the existing fields, kind of a quirky place for it, but it's been there for 8 years, so we've left it there. So instead of using this to drag in the amount field, you use this toolbar at the top, you drag it on, and you see it'll snap back into place. So it puts the toolbar back at the top. Okay, well, let's go into a different form. Let's close this down. Let's go back into our demo one here, one of our bigger forms. All right, so here we're back at a form that has all the fields and all the controls on it. So let's talk about what we can do with these controls, right? Every control has properties to it. So let's just remove it. I'm just going to clean this up so we can see what's going on here. Let's just say like the expiration, right? I'm going to drag the expiration control onto the screen. Now, it always brings a label with it. So that happens just by default. But I'm going to deselect both controls and select only the text box to enter in the date. And what we're seeing over here underneath this existing field is what's called properties. Okay? Every control has some pretty unique properties, and some people stumble upon them and find them. Others know about them and all the controls. But I'm going to look at this control, and I have things on this control like, well, we want to show the age of the control, right? So that'll say the date, in a date format. But if I make this larger, it'll say, 2 years, 3 months. That's an age thing. Show only the time. the opposite of, show time. If I say show time, again, it's going to be date and time. So there's the date property, and there's the drop down for time. Again, it's still all attached into one control. But we say show only time, you may be booking something out and say, just like you do in the Act calendar, and I want this appointment at 9 o'clock, and you really don't care about what day it is, and you say show only time, then the control becomes just a drop down to enter in the time value. Time will be in 15-minute increments here. These are some of the controls we can do. Let's just roll it back. The other options we have on here, default to today's date. So when you're entering a new record and you click on add new, you could say, hey, default this to today's date. Well, expiration, that might be, nice expiration is today, but the expiration could be at a year from the day you entered the record. So I can say default date and add years. I'm going to add 1 year to that. So again, now when you create a new record, it will be 6/7 of 23. That'll default to it. If we want to default to just using months, then we can say add months, and we can actually default just to days. I say, hey, it's good for 3 weeks, so it's 15 days. Well, you're saying 15 days, 3 weeks, that's business days, not calendar days. Well, you can do that too. Say it's 15 days, but you can say default it to business days. Right now it's calendar days. I can say default it to business days. So it'll be 15 business days from the time that you created a new record. All right, so that's some of the properties. Let's go and look at, let's just go and say, remove that control and that control. Let's just look at a text box. Now, a text box really doesn't have much in it. Spell check as you type, select field on entry. Let me go to something else here. Let's go and use notes. All right, so this is a notes box, right? Memo field notes box. Now, in the notes box, you may have 20 other controls on the screen, and you're really trying to find room on the screen. Let's just go and look at what this note box looks like. We're in the demo one, so let's set that as default. So now if I come along, and you see our little notes box now is working. But in a notes box, we have a toolbar at the top. It takes up a lot of room when you have very limited space on here. So if we go into the designer here, bring it back over. I'm going to go to the note box, and over here again, we have quick properties. So spell check as you type, show the toolbar. I'm going to say false to that. And as you can imagine, what's going to happen is there's going to be no toolbar at the top, but it is still going to be a notes field where you can type in, and you can right click and increase the font size, make it bold, do everything what you want as a note would happen, but you don't have the toolbar at the top. Let's go back into the designer. And again, that was the notes field. Let's go over to here. Let's remove the notes field. Let's look at a drop down. Let's see if I have anything controls on the drop down. Table, not really. I mean, there is something in here, but tab control name, show tab controls. That has to deal with the show tab with a very powerful feature. I'm not going to get into it right now. Be part of another webinar for cascading drop down. All right, well, that's some of the controls here. And like I said, you may want to go and look at the properties of those controls. All right, let's continue on here to our tools at the top. We've been in the existing fields. If I want to create a new field, I can click on the create. These are all the act-defined field types. So I want to create a currency field. All I have to do is drag that onto the screen, and it's going to bring forward our defined fields. Just let the act-defined field. It defaults to currency. It gives you some options, what you want to do. Of course, you would change the name of it, and you would set it up. You hit finish, and it would add add that field into the database, and it would add that control into here. So you have all these different types of controls that will generate new fields. All right, let's go to the parent-child list. What is a parent-child list? Actually, let's get out of here. Let's go to a different form. Save changes. Yeah, whatever. Let's go to the webinar form. Say you're using this form, right, doing a webinar for your policies, and you want to mark down services that you do to that policy. So that would be a child record, meaning for every parent record, for every policy, there could be multiple services. So a child, meaning parent, can have multiple childs. So let's go into Designer and let's go and do something like that. So let's come over to here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is let's make some more room here, because I'm going to put a list at the bottom here. I'm going to move this down, and the notes field I'm actually going to make smaller. And over here again, we have parent-child. So down here, I want a list of services I perform to this policy. I think I have a services. Yeah, I have a services custom table. These are all the custom tables and or the ACT default tables that are in here. So you can see the database I'm in. I have a table called payments. I have a table called insurance. I have a table called events. Hey, maybe we'll just use events. Events on our webinar. So I'm just actually going to take from the parent-child list the events, and I'm going to drag it right onto the screen. Now, it sizes it by default like 400 wide, so I'm just going to resize it. And what I have now is I have an events table at the bottom of this policy. So I'm just going to save changes to this. Right, so here it is. We have this. We have no events to it, right? So if I want to create a new event, which is going to be attached to this record, this policy record, I would just say new event. Oh, now I have a terrible data entry form for the new events here. I guess let's just go in a minute here. Let's just go in and let's make this like really nice here. So I'm just going to make an events table, and I'm going to say what was the outcome of the event, and what was the outcome date of the event, and was the event complete? Was the event completed? And again, let's just make this really nice and small and simple. Let's go to our buttons and say OK, and put a cancel button on there. OK, and cancel, and resize the screen. All right, so I have a little events data entry form I have now. So again, I'm going to say new event. Outcome was the event was closed. The outcome date was this. I mark it as being completed. I say OK, and now we have the outcomes of those events attached to a policy. So that's a parent-child. So let's go into the designer again. Let's continue on. What else can we do? So I'm going to just remove this child table. I can just highlight it and hit the delete key on the keyboard. So that was parent-child. Panels and containers. All right, you may have a data entry form where you don't want it to be 18 inches wide. You can actually put a tab control on the form. So you can have tab control, page 1 and page 2. And inside of page 1, what you're going to do is I'm going to grab all this information here. And I am at one swoop going to drag it right onto page 1. So now let me just move this whole control up. So now I have a control where it's tab page 1 and page 2 is empty. Well, page 2, let's put the comps on page 2. Right? Comp 1, comp 2. Oh, I think comp 3, but comp 3. So I have tab page 1 and tab page 2. So now, as you can imagine, that's what your data entry form is. This is really great when you have a data entry form that has, literally, I have some people that have hundreds of fields. They're performing a loan refinance, and you have the buyer, sorry, the refinance, you have the mortgage company, the payoff lender, the attorney involved, and you don't want to see all of it all the time. So you can bury things underneath different tabs. Now, under the tab pages, it just says tab page 1 and page 2. We can come along and name it what we want. So we go to tab pages. Again, look at properties over here, right? So we have these properties underneath here. Things like show the tabs. Actually, you may not want to show the tabs at the top. Tab alignment. I want the tabs at the bottom of the screen. I want the tabs on the left side of the screen. Things like that. So you have all these different buried properties underneath here. But we have here, it says Tab Pages Durkin, and it's a collection of it. And if I click on this, you'll see how we get a little editor. Tab page 1 and page 2. And if we click on tab page 1, it says text. I'll say my basic information, right? And then on tab page 2, I'm going to call it, info, additional info. So I just named it basic and info. And as you can see, that's what my tabs say now. And again, that's because I selected the tab control and went into the collection here. I can change the background color. I've seen people get very fanciful inside of here and change a lot of things. You can change the fonts, how big the fonts are. I want it to be 14 point bold. And say okay, and see it defaults all the fonts to that size. Let's just go back to 10 point regular, blah, 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 say okay. That is a tab page control. All right, let's do this. I'm going to remove the tab page control. I'm going to take my information. I just want to keep my information lying around. Over inside of here, I have tabs still, right? Basic info, but I'm going to grab the whole tab control and remove it. That's going to remove the tab and any controls that are still attached to it. So those comps went away also. Okay, let's see. That's panels and containers. Well, containers, tab controls, but you also can have a panel, which just is a color background. So you may want to say, hey, I have this panel here, and I have this panel here, and in this panel, I want it to be this light green. And then let's go back to the fields, and maybe you just want to put your comps over in the light green area and put other information. It's just a visual way to separate the fields, the information on the screen. That's just panels. Again, that's panels and containers. There is one cool panel here. A few people have found it, really love it. Panels with a footer total. Now, I don't think I have currency fields in here, do I? No, I don't have currency fields. But all right, let me just tell you what the idea of it is. If I grab this panel and add it here, whatever controls you throw into this panel, it'll total them up at the bottom. So if I go back to existing fields, no, I don't have any currency. Let's go and create a field. Let's just use a currency field. I'm going to put a currency field in here. Currency text box 1. Okay, let's just hit finish. Let's just add a currency text box. What will happen is if we add currency text box 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I didn't hit save. Sorry, guys, I'm going too fast. So we come back to here. Let me undo. I should have hit save there, really, right? So I'm going to remember what I did here. I dragged this up. I removed the tab page, and I was working on these panels. So again, panel with footer, I put over here. Go back to my existing fields, and here's my text box currency. When I add the text box currency into here, it will take the value of this and total it down into here. So you could have something like line item 1, line item 2, tax, and delivery charge. You could actually have those all buried inside of this little control, and you'll get a total, visual total right at the bottom of that control. That's a very cute tool. Say save changes. Do you want to delete? Yes. Okay, let's go on to specialized controls. What are specialized controls? Well, specialized controls, here's the easiest one to say, like a file picker. You may have a text box. Let's just go in here. Let's just say use these comps. Maybe this comp 1 is a file on your hard drive, and you want to point to that file on the hard drive. Well, if I drag this comp box, it's just going to be a text box that you type into, and that really is not useful to be a picker. So if we go to specialized controls and say, hey, we have a file picker here. And we're dragging in, it's generic, so it doesn't know which to attach it to. So I'm going to attach it to the field called comp1. And as you can see, it's got a little ellipse button on there now. So now what happens with this control, it's going to, this is text, this is comp field 1. If I just typed into it, that's fine. But I can click on this button here and say, oh, select the text box. Here, getting started. And there it is. So now I have a file picker control on here. And if I click on this, it's kind of like a hot link. So it's going to go and open it up. There it did. It opened up on my Google Drive. Google has a get started document. So that's what it opens up. If that was a PDF or a Word document or an Excel file that I selected, it would have opened the appropriate application to do that. So that's a file picker. Let's go inside of it. The same kind of idea about storing documents outside of ACT, like they're on your hard drive. You may have a folder that you have your client's data in. So if we go back to specialized controls, here's a folder picker. So I got a folder picker. Now I'm going to put this on comp 2. Right? So there's the folder picker. And down here, we have the link types. So again, look at the properties of it. It's like it defaults to a folder, but it can be an FTP site, it can be a file, it can be an email type, it can be whatever. I'm just going to leave it on the folder type, and I'm going to save changes to go and show you this. So here we have it. Again, I can type straight into it. It's a text field, but I'm going to select this and see it says folder. So now, yeah, let's go to, this is my build release folder. I'll say okay to that. So here's the folder I have. Now if I click on that, it opened up this folder. I had to drag it from the other screen. And there's that folder. So that could be a folder on your server where you store your client's documents. That's a folder picker. Okay, let's go back into the Designer. I know we're running in about a half hour now. So let's just see if we can do a couple more real quickly here. So specialized controls. And you can search these other ones. Combo boxes, date range activities. That's for like a start date, end date activities. Let's see what else. Numeric boxes up and down. What's nice about this is if it's a numeric value, it puts the little up and down buttons on it versus you have to type it. So you go click, 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 and you get your add 3 to your numeric values. All right, let's go to buttons and pick list. I was in here a little bit, and I remember I added the OK and the cancel button, right? That was OK and cancel. We have specialized buttons that says, oh, create an activity, right? So on this button, I drag the button to create activity, and it's going to say the button text. What do you want to say on the button? Create activity and the activity type. What activity type do you want it to be? I want it to be a meeting. If you're going to create it, it's going to say use these values when you're creating it. So start date is today. I want it to start next week, next month. I want an offset of 30 days, 9 a.m. in the morning, and I want it regarding comp 2. So when I click, or comp 1, the regarding field on the activity type will be the value of whatever's in the comp field 1 in there. If you just want to say, follow-up, you can just type in follow-up in there versus having it dynamically merged together in that side there. So that's a create activity thing. We have the same thing with create notes and create histories. This one's a relatively new one. It's called print document. Let's just describe what this one does, because people find this one and they go, oh, this is really cool. Say I'm filling in this policy and I'm done, and the user's process is, oh, well, I want to go into the Word document and I got to print out the agreement. So I come in here, I click on create, I send it, it goes away, and it says, okay, now that I've created it, I need to go back in and take this policy renewal, and I need to convert it to a PDF and email it to the client. Now you can do that every time you come in here and, oh, what action to take, I want to email it as an attachment. and you can change it every time. But you can also create a button that does all those 3 or 4 steps at one time. So let me go into design here. And again, we're buttons and pick list. So here is print document. So I'm going to drag this button over here, print document. Now I'm going to print the policy renewal. So I'm selecting which document I have. So if this list is blank, it's because you haven't created any document templates yet. But there's a policy renewal. I want to email it as an attachment, and I want the format to be PDF. All right, so I'm telling it what to do. So one button does now all those actions. So if I hit save here, and I'm going to close the form down. So again, new policy, I'm in here. I finished all the data entry form. I now just have to click on the policy renewal button one time. It merges it, converts it to PDF, attaches it to an Outlook, and Outlook's over here. It's clicking up at me. And here it is, Outlook opened up. Jonathan, that's who this record's sitting here, Jonathan, right? And let me go back, I clicked off of it. And we have the policy renewal document. I already attached to it, and it's sitting here. So, hi, Jonathan. Here is your policy renewal, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and you would just hit the send button, and send it would go. So, a really cool button just to create, 5, 6, 7 actions underneath of one button. Okay, let's go back into the designer. I know we're going back and forth a bit, but that's to show it to you. I have to kind of consume it. So that was under buttons and pick lists. Another nice one too is run a math function, right? Which will say you have math functions down here. So if I have let's just create a new math function. I want the field to be updated the amount, and the formula is the number multiplied by this currency text box, right? So I just created a simple little formula. I'm going to say okay to that. And it puts this in more of an editor kind of field. That little window that comes forward first is just a simple little wizard, we'll call it, right? So here I have one called, I'll call it set value, all right? So we're giving it a name of this formula. I'm going to hit save to say okay to that. And as down here, you can see we have multiple formulas, math formulas on this data entry form. So I want to run this formula every time. So if I click on take this button and drag it onto the screen. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, it's over here. It's on the other window. Sorry. So it brings up a little wizard, and what's the button name? And I'll say, click me, right? And when it clicked me, set value is the formula, the math function I want to run. So now we have a click me button, and it'll run that formula. One of the reasons we put that on there is, formula A plus B equals C. It's kind of automatic in Impact, but you may have a formula that drives into an export or drives to a website or does an API call to get geocoding data. We have a lot of users that will hire us to push this policy into their accounting system. So what we would do is we would write a little bit of script inside of here to push that policy information into QuickBooks, we'll say. So that then the end users know to come along and say, okay, my job is to fill in the policy information, send the policy renewal, click on this button to the PDF to Outlook, and then click me, and it'll run that script to push it to their accounting system. Okay, let's go along. Like I said, this is kind of like a top-level thing here of all the different functions that we have inside of here. So we were on buttons and pick lists. If you have a developer yourself or are a developer, and you can write in C# or VB, anything in Visual.net, JScript, you can actually invoke your own code from inside of here. And that's what this DLL invoke is. So you can have your own custom DLL written by somebody, very complex, thousands of lines of code, and you could say, well, let's invoke it in here. And when you go and you run the custom code, your developer would say, oh, what's my DLL class, the file name, and the method it needs to call. Really cool that we can attach very complex outsourcing to other DLLs from inside of the pretty standard data entry window. Okay, cascading dropdowns is our last one. If we go look at the top, there's our cascading dropdown. Now, the cascading dropdowns is just that. It's a dropdown. Let me just make some space here. Actually, let me just get rid of these, right? Make space so easy. You may, the easiest way of cascading dropdowns, I don't know if I have the data in here, but I'm going to try it in a second, is that you may say, I want to pick out cars from 2010, and then it'll show you all the car manufacturers. You say, okay, I want Fords. And then you select the Fords dropdown, and the next cascading one will say Explorers, Escapes, or whatever. So it kind of filters down, cascading down your values into a single source. So let's just see, contact, events, insurance. I don't know if I have a table that, automobiles. Yeah, but this doesn't have a lot of data in it. So if I select this, we'll just show it to you here. It drops this little cascading control on here. Oh, okay, I'm going to say let's add division. Division goes into Comp A. What it's saying is when I'm selecting the drop down from the division field, put that field from the automobile table into Comp A. That happens to be one of the fields we're on. All right, so let's say division, and then we'll say car line. I don't know what's in this data. So I'm going to say car line goes into 2. And then, manufacturer. Ooh, that should have probably been first. Manufacturer goes into 3. Oh, I can move it up. Move it up. And say, okay. Yeah, I threw it off here. Sorry. Let's just try this. So I'm going to do manufacturer first. So cascade from automobiles. And let's go where we know data. Manufacturer into 1. And then, what was it? Car line goes into 2. And then we'll say, hey, how many cylinders does the car have? Goes into 3. We'll say, okay. There we go. So I selected them. So now we have these in here. And if I come back into our form, I hit my drop down. Oh yeah, I do have data in here. So I want all the Ferraris inside of here. And I have 5 different types of Ferraris. I want the F12 Ferrari. And F12 Ferrari actually only comes in 12 cylinders. So as you can see, that's what a cascading drop down does for you. Let's see what's in the BMW line this year. BMWs. And here's all the BMW automobiles. Let's go for the 535i Coupe, and it only comes in 6 cylinders. So you see that's a cascading drop down. Very nice when you, especially when you're doing a lot of data entry in here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the designer, but I think we've covered everything in here. I just wanted to go back and give you guys a quick little recap. Right? So one of the recaps is up here is the toolbox item. So by default, here's your existing fields. But if you want to create a new field, if you want to go to the parent-child list, all these over here, reset all the controls that you can drag onto the form. So that's one of them. You want to make sure you know how to hunt around and get to it. The other one to look forward to, this is where people find this and find a lot of power in here, is the properties down here. So I just selected the expiration here, and I can see that I have these customized properties. Let's say if I click on automobiles, see here's the automobile one, and here's all the properties, and here I can go back in and kind of rebuild the cascading dropdown. If I wanted to go into this one, this has the templates, right? So this was my policy one. Policy print, and it's showing me which template I'm going to use, preview the email, what the button is. So if I want to come in here and say, send policy now, I can come in and change that. So again, this is the properties window of all the different controls inside of here. Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming, attending today's meeting. Again, this is a high level on how you can use Impact Data Entry Form Designer to really increase your productivity. Okay, thanks for attending, everybody. Bye.